Have you noticed that you're no longer walking as straight as you used to? Maybe it happened so gradually that you barely noticed at first. You started drifting slightly to one side when you walked down the hallway. You found yourself reaching for the wall when you get up in the night. Your steps have gotten shorter, a little more careful, a little more deliberate. And somewhere along the way, walking, something you did without a single thought for decades, started to feel like something you have to concentrate on. If any of that sounds familiar, I want you to know something important before we go any further. You are not alone, and this is not simply something you have to accept. So many people over 70 are told, either directly or indirectly, that unsteady walking is just what happens with age, that the drifting, the wobbling, the fear of losing your footing on an uneven pavement, that all of this is simply the price of getting older. Maybe you've even started to believe it yourself. Maybe you've quietly stopped walking to places you used to love, or started avoiding social situations because you're afraid of stumbling in front of others. I understand that fear. I hear it from patients every single week. The fear of falling, the fear of losing independence, the fear of becoming a burden. These are real, deeply human worries, and they deserve a real, honest answer. Today, I'm going to share with you the hidden causes of walking problems after 70 that most people never hear about. And more importantly, the specific, simple changes that can make a meaningful difference. Stay until the end, because what comes next could change the way you walk forever. Subscribe Bridge. If you want simple health tips that help you stay strong, independent, and active after 60, subscribe and turn on notifications. It only takes 2 seconds. Science section. To understand why walking changes after 70, we first have to understand what walking actually is, because most people think of it as a simple, automatic thing the legs do. The truth is, every single step you take is a remarkable act of whole-body coordination. Your brain sends signals down through your spinal cord to your leg muscles. Your inner ear sends constant updates about where your head is in space. Your eyes read the ground ahead of you. Your joints report back on where your limbs are positioned. And your muscles respond to all of that information in a fraction of a second, thousands of times in a single walk around the block. When any one of those systems slips, even slightly, walking changes. And after 70, several of them tend to shift at the same time. Let's start with the muscles. Beginning around the age of 50, the body begins losing muscle mass, a process called sarcopenia. By the time most people reach their mid-70s, they may have lost between 20 and 30% of the muscle strength they had in their prime. The muscles most affected are the ones in the hips and thighs, the very muscles responsible for keeping your pelvis level and your stride steady. When those muscles weaken, your body compensates by shortening your steps and widening your stance, which is why older adults often develop that careful, shuffling gait that looks so different from how they walked at 50. Then there are the nerve signals. Think of the nerves in your legs like electrical wires. Over time, those wires develop a little fraying, a little slowing. The medical term is peripheral neuropathy when it's significant, but even in people without a diagnosis, nerve conduction simply slows with age. Your brain sends a signal to correct your balance, and the muscles respond, but a fraction of a second slower than before. That delay is often enough to cause a stumble. The inner ear contains a tiny fluid-filled system called the vestibular system, your body's internal gyroscope. It tells your brain whether you're tilting, turning, or moving in any direction. With age, the hair cells inside this system gradually decrease in number and sensitivity. This is one of the main reasons older adults often feel dizzy when they stand up quickly, or feel unsteady in low light when the eyes can't compensate for what the inner ear is missing. Speaking of eyes, vision changes play a more significant role in walking than most people realize. Depth perception often decreases with age. The contrast between a step and the floor, or between a curb and the pavement, becomes harder to detect. This is one reason older adults are more likely to trip on very familiar obstacles. Their legs are moving correctly, but the brain isn't reading the terrain accurately enough. Joint stiffness, particularly in the ankles and hips, further reduces the range of motion available with each step. When the ankle can't flex fully, the toe doesn't clear the ground as cleanly, increasing the risk of catching and tripping. And here's what most people never hear. All of these systems interact with each other. When one weakens, the others are forced to compensate. That compensation works for a while, but eventually the whole system becomes less resilient, less adaptable, and more vulnerable to the kinds of stumbles that lead to falls. The good news, and I want to say this clearly, is that none of these systems is beyond influence. Research has shown, again and again, that targeted exercise, sensible lifestyle adjustments, and the right information can meaningfully improve balance, walking quality, and confidence even well into your 70s and 80s. That's not optimism, that's science. Patient story. 1. Let me tell you about Dorothy Harmon, a 76-year-old retired librarian from Vermont who came to see me after what she described as 3 increasingly frightening years. Dorothy had always been active. She loved her morning walks to the village post office, her weekly trips to the farmer's market, her Sunday visits to church. But over the past 3 years, something had quietly shifted. She'd started drifting to the left when she walked, sometimes bumping into door frames, sometimes grabbing for the railing of a staircase she'd climbed hundreds of times without a second thought. She told me that on 2 separate occasions, she had stumbled on completely flat ground. She hadn't fallen, but she'd come close enough that the memory of it stayed with her. By the time she came to see me, Dorothy had stopped going to the farmer's market. She'd reduced her walks to once or twice a week, and even then, only when her daughter could come with her. "I don't trust myself anymore," she told me quietly. "I used to walk everywhere. Now I'm scared of my own driveway." The fear of falling had shrunk her world considerably, and that loss of independence was, in her words, more frightening than any physical pain she'd ever experienced. When I assessed Dorothy, the picture became clearer. She had significant weakness in her hip abductor muscles, the muscles on the outer hip that keep your pelvis level with every step. She also had reduced sensation in her feet, likely related to mild undiagnosed neuropathy, and her ankle flexibility was quite limited. She had been relying almost entirely on her vision to compensate for what her balance system was no longer providing, which explained why she felt so much worse in dim lighting or on unfamiliar ground. Dorothy's mistake, through no fault of her own, was that she had been resting more in response to the unsteadiness. It felt logical, but rest was allowing her hip muscles to weaken further and her ankle stiffness to worsen. She was caught in a cycle without knowing it. We began with a simple daily program of seated hip-strengthening exercises and ankle mobility work, along with a specific heel-to-toe walking technique she practiced for 10 minutes each morning in her hallway. I also referred her for a brief course of vestibular physiotherapy. Within 6 weeks, her lateral drift had significantly reduced. At her 3-month follow-up, her score on a standardized balance assessment had improved by nearly 50%. She was walking to the post office again, alone, confidently, without holding anyone's arm. She smiled when she told me, "I forgot what it felt like to just walk without thinking about every step. I'm starting to remember." That is what the right information, at the right time, can do. Deeper science and myth-busting. Now I want to address something I believe very strongly, because I've seen it hold too many people back from getting better. The belief is this: walking problems after 70 are simply a fact of old age, and nothing significant can be done about them. This is not only unhelpful, it is contradicted by a growing body of research. A major study published in the New England Journal of Medicine found that structured exercise programs in adults over 70 significantly reduced the rate of fall-related injuries, including among participants who were already experiencing balance difficulties. The intervention didn't require gym equipment or intensive training. It involved consistent, targeted movements, balance exercises, gentle strengthening, and improved walking habits, performed regularly at home. Research from the Journal of the American Geriatric Society has shown that the brain retains a remarkable capacity for adaptation well into old age. Scientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself, to build new neural pathways, and to improve the efficiency of existing ones. In practical terms, this means that when you practice balance and walking exercises consistently, your brain literally rewires itself to perform those movements more reliably. The signals get faster, the coordination improves, the stumbles become less frequent. One study followed adults aged 70 to 85 who completed a 12-week targeted balance program. At the end of the 12 weeks, participants showed measurable improvements in walking speed, step length, and performance on single-leg balance tests, improvements that had been thought by many clinicians to be impossible in that age group. The honest truth is that many walking problems in older adults are not caused by age alone. They are caused by a combination of muscle weakness, reduced movement, poor footwear, unaddressed sensory changes, and sometimes the side effects of medications, all of which can be addressed. Age is a context, not a sentence. And the sooner someone receives the right guidance, the more they can do about it. Practical guide: how to fix it. Let me give you a clear, practical guide. Things you can begin today that can genuinely make a difference in how you walk and how safe you feel on your feet. The first priority is hip and leg strengthening. Begin with seated leg raises while sitting in a firm chair. Sit tall, straighten one leg until it's level with your hip, hold for 3 seconds, then lower it slowly. Do 10 repetitions on each side, 2 sets, once a day. This directly targets the quadriceps and hip flexors that are often the weakest link in walking stability. Next, add a simple standing heel raise. Hold the back of a sturdy chair with both hands. Rise up onto your toes slowly. Hold for 2 seconds, then lower back down with control. 10 repetitions, 2 sets. This rebuilds calf strength and improves ankle flexibility, both critical for clearing your foot properly with each step. For balance directly, practice the tandem stand. Hold a countertop or wall for support. Place one foot directly in front of the other, heel touching toe, and hold that position for 15 to 30 seconds. Switch feet. Do this twice on each side. It sounds simple, but it trains the very balance mechanisms that prevent drifting and stumbling. As this gets easier over several weeks, try letting go of the support for a few seconds at a time. Walking technique matters enormously. Many older adults develop a habit of looking down at the ground. It feels safer, but it actually disrupts balance because it tilts your head forward and changes your center of gravity. Practice walking with your eyes forward, looking about 10 feet ahead of you. Keep your shoulders relaxed and let your arms swing naturally. Aim for a heel-to-toe rolling motion rather than a flat-footed shuffle. Your footwear deserves serious attention. Shoes with thick, soft soles may feel comfortable, but reduce the sensory feedback your feet send to your brain about the ground beneath you. Look for shoes with a firm, flat sole, a low heel, and secure fastening. Laces or Velcro, not slip-ons. Avoid walking indoors in socks alone, as this significantly increases slip risk. Hydration is more connected to balance than most people expect. Even mild dehydration reduces blood pressure and can cause lightheadedness that makes balance worse. Aim for 6 to 8 glasses of water daily and drink a glass before you begin any exercise. For your home, remove loose rugs, add night lights to hallways and the path to the bathroom, and consider a grab bar beside the toilet and in the shower if you haven't already. These changes take an afternoon, but can prevent a fall that takes months to recover from. Tell me in the comments what walking challenge you struggle with most. I read every single one. Patient story 2. I also want to share the story of Harold Beaumont, a 73-year-old former high school football coach from Georgia, because his situation was quite different from Dorothy's, and the solution was different too. Harold wasn't a man who admitted weakness easily. He'd spent 40 years coaching athletes and prided himself on physical toughness, but he came to see me after his wife insisted, worried about what she'd been watching for months. Harold had developed a noticeable forward lean when he walked. He was taking very short, rapid steps. He'd nearly fallen twice on their back porch, and he'd started avoiding evening walks entirely because the reduced light made him feel dangerously unsteady. His walking pattern pointed to something specific: a combination of significant hip flexor tightness from years of coaching on the sidelines, paired with the early effects of Parkinson's-like movement changes that his primary care physician had not yet fully explored. Harold had also been on a blood pressure medication for 2 years that, I discovered, was likely contributing to his dizziness and shuffle when transitioning from sitting to standing. We worked closely with his neurologist and adjusted his medication timing, which alone made a noticeable difference in his morning steadiness. We added a specific hip flexor stretching routine, 3 stretches held for 30 seconds each, performed every morning before he stood up, along with deliberate stride length practice where Harold used lines on a floor to consciously extend each step. Harold was the kind of man who needed to see data, so I measured his walking speed and stride length every 3 weeks. Seeing the numbers improve gave him something concrete to work toward. By the 4-month mark, Harold's walking speed had increased measurably, his forward lean had reduced, and he had returned to evening walks with his wife, Dee, using a cane initially for confidence, though he needed it less and less. He looked at me at his last appointment with a quiet kind of pride and said, "I coached kids their whole athletic careers. Turns out I still had some coaching left to do on myself." That spirit of willingness to work, to adjust, to keep trying, that is available to every one of you watching this today. The ideal daily plan. Let me put all of this together into a daily routine you can actually follow. In the morning, before you even stand up from bed, do 10 gentle ankle circles in each direction and 10 slow knee lifts while lying flat. These wake up the circulation in your legs and help prevent that unsteady, heavy feeling when you first put your feet on the floor. When you do stand, pause for a full 5 seconds at the bedside before walking. This allows your blood pressure to adjust and reduces the risk of dizziness. After breakfast, spend 10 minutes on your strengthening exercises, the seated leg raises and standing heel raises described earlier. Morning is ideal because your energy levels are typically higher and you'll be less fatigued than later in the day. For your walking schedule, aim for 15 to 20 minutes of purposeful walking each day. If that feels like too much, begin with 10 minutes and build by 2 minutes each week. Walk on flat, familiar ground first and progress to gentle hills or varied terrain as your confidence grows. If you feel unsteady, use a walking pole or cane. These are tools of independence, not symbols of weakness. Midday is a good time for your tandem balance practice, 2 sets on each side, using a countertop for support. Keep a glass of water nearby and drink it before and after. For meals, focus on protein, eggs, fish, chicken, legumes, because your muscles need amino acids to strengthen and repair. Vitamin D and calcium support bone health and reduce fall injury risk if a stumble does occur. If you feel uncertain about your nutrition, a brief conversation with your doctor or a registered dietitian can be invaluable. In the evening, do 5 minutes of gentle stretching, hip flexors, calves, and ankles. The figure 4 stretch in a chair is wonderful for hip flexibility. Finish with a few minutes of slow, mindful breathing to calm your nervous system before sleep. If you feel more unsteady on certain days, that's normal. Listen to your body and reduce intensity rather than skipping the routine entirely. If you need more support during standing exercises, use 2 hands on a sturdy surface and build gradually. Warnings and medication. Note: before I close today, I want to speak honestly about warning signs and medication considerations, because your safety always comes first. If you experience sudden onset dizziness, a new significant change in your balance, numbness or tingling spreading into your legs, or any episode of actual falling, please contact your doctor promptly rather than waiting. These can sometimes signal conditions that need medical evaluation beyond exercise alone. Many blood pressure medications, including diuretics, beta blockers, and alpha blockers, and can cause lightheadedness when you stand up quickly. This is called orthostatic hypotension, and it is a significant but often under-recognized contributor to walking difficulty and fall risk in older adults. Your doctor can assess whether your medication timing or dosage might be contributing. Diabetes medications can also affect balance through their influence on blood sugar, and diabetic neuropathy in the feet dramatically changes sensory feedback during walking. If you have diabetes and are experiencing walking difficulty, this connection deserves specific attention from your care team. Talk to your personal doctor before starting any new exercise program. These suggestions are generally safe, but your doctor needs to know what changes you're making, particularly if you have osteoporosis, a recent joint replacement, a heart condition, or any neurological diagnosis. Emotional close. Let me bring everything we've discussed today back to what matters most: you and the life you deserve to keep living. Walking problems after 70 are not always caused by age alone. In many cases, they are caused by a combination of muscle weakness, reduced activity, sensory changes, and gaps in information, all of which respond to the right approach. That is not wishful thinking. That is what the research shows, and that is what I see in my patients every week. I think of Dorothy, who spent 3 years shrinking her world because she no longer trusted her own legs, and who is now walking to the post office alone again, noticing things along the way she'd forgotten to look at. She told me, "I forgot what it felt like to just walk without thinking about every step. I'm starting to remember." I want that for you. The steadiness, the confidence, the freedom to move through your own neighborhood, your own home, your own life, without fear as your constant companion. Your body can still adapt, strengthen, and improve. It wants to, but it needs the right movement, the right information, and someone who takes your experience seriously. If this video helped you today, please subscribe so you never miss what's coming next. Hit the like button to help this reach someone who needs it. Share it with a family member or a friend who has been quietly struggling. And leave me a comment below. Tell me your story. Ask your question. I read every single one. You deserve to walk with confidence. Let's make that happen together. Disclaimer: this video is for informational and educational purposes only. Always consult your personal doctor before making any changes to your exercise routine, diet, medications, or treatment.